Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're a first-time viewer, my name is Jeff Lanoski. Today's super exciting because I'm taking my 2020 Reeb ReDikyelous and we're swapping this out for my 2021 model. And with my setup this year, I'm bucking some of the most popular trends in the mountain bike industry. If you're already a subscriber to the channel, thank you so much. And if you stumbled upon this video just searching for hardtail stuff, make sure you click the subscribe button and the notifications so that you don't miss any of my future videos riding this bike. The ReDikyelous is my signature bike from Reeb Cycles. The idea was to make something lower, slacker, and shorter in the rear end and more playful than anything Reeb has ever offered. This is a size large frame. It has a 485 reach, a 406 millimeter chainstay, which is insanely short, a 65-degree head angle, a 74-degree seat tube, and a ton of standover due to the 18-inch seat tube on this super roomy large frame. And here's YouTube's first look at my 2021 Reeb ReDikyelous. Like I teased you at the jump, I made a bunch of big changes to the geometry, but let's take a look at the components before we get into the changes I made on the frame. So first off, this is a full chromoly frame. This year, instead of going with red, I went with this super deep hunter green frame that from most angles looks like it's black, but when you see it in the sun, it has a really awesome green shade to it. I want to tell you all about the parts on this bike. Some of it's super similar to the red bike that I rode last year, and some is quite a bit different. So starting off at the cockpit, one big change is going up to a 35 millimeter diameter carbon handlebar. It's a Pro Tharsis bar, and then I'm going to a 45 millimeter stem. That's 10 millimeters longer than I went with last year, but that complements the changes in the geometry that I made. So as far as drivetrain and brakes, it's an XTR kit. So it has the XTR trail brakes front and rear with 180 rotors. And then as far as gearing, I have a 34 tooth chainring in the front and a 1051 in the rear. Another big upgrade to this bike this year are the wheel set. So this is the Industry 9 Carbon 315. It's a little bit wider than I ran last year. I have these on my suspension bike. They definitely have a really cool supple feel. So last year I was riding the aluminum wheel set. This year, we're going full carbon. And in order to keep with the green theme, green spokes and hubs. Something that's super important on this bike is the MRP bash guard. My seat post is a 200 millimeter PNW dropper, super reliable, tons of drop, gets the saddle way far out of the way. My grips are Ergon GD1 grips, and they're this really cool forest green see-through color. And for the saddle, I have an Ergon SME saddle. Tires are super important when you're riding technical terrain. These are the Vittoria Mazda tires. I run a 2.6 in the front and a 2.4 in the rear, and these are just the standard trail casings. My pedals are the trusty XTR trail pedals, and one of the most important parts of this bike is orange seal sealant to allow me to ride all day flat free. And last but not least, the only suspension on this bike is a DVO diamond fork, and that is set at 140. All right, so the ReDikyelous is my signature frame set. Last year we offered 3 sizes, small, medium, and large, and I obviously rode a large because I'm 6'4". One of the cool things about working with a small custom manufacturer like Reeb, I can make this bike exactly how I want it. And I kind of felt like last year that for technical East Coast riding, my bike was a little bit long. The red bike last year was awesome downhilling, it was awesome at bike parks, but sometimes when I wanted to bunny hop it, do some jibbing, ride some technical stuff, I felt like it was a tiny bit too long. So this will be the new size large. We're adding a 4th size in this frame this year, so you can size up or size down as well. My old large will become an extra large, has a reach that's 20 millimeters shorter than my old bike. So this is a 465 reach. The reasoning behind it was I wanted to run a longer stem. A 45 is what I like to ride for technical riding. The shorter top tube will allow me to bunny hop and have just a slightly more nimble bike. And then another change that we made that totally bucks some of the trends is I actually made the chainstays a tiny bit longer. Last year on the size large, they were 406 millimeters. That's the shortest chainstay that I ever had. But when I wanted to bunny hop and things like that, sometimes I felt like it was a tiny bit too short. So the new chainstay length is 420 millimeters. It's just a tiny bit longer, but it gives you a little bit better pop on those bunny hops. My head tube and stack is all the same as the old bike. Seat tube is the same as the old bike. So essentially, this is just like my old bike, just a tiny bit shorter in the front and a tiny bit longer in the rear, just to balance it out a little bit. So here is my theory on hardtail bike geometry, and I'm curious what you think. So if you're watching this whole video, comment below and let me know what you think. Long slack front end with a steep seat tube and short chainstays works awesome on modern day full suspension bikes, but I'm not quite sure that that's what I want to ride on my personal hardtail. One of the problems on old school long travel 2.9ers where the rear ends were really long and you had laid back seat posts, so that did two things. The seat tube was always in the way, so you couldn't get rear travel without having a rear long end. And when you sat on the seat and climbed, it just cantilevered the suspension back. So what designers did were move that seat tube forward to give you a little bit more room for rear travel and to allow you to shorten the chainstays. And it also put you in a really good position for climbing because you weren't cantilevering the frame back anymore, bobbing your rear suspension all over the place when you were climbing. Now, once you're sitting much further forward over your pedals, you start to get cramped over your head tube. So you need to make the reach longer. As reaches grew on bikes, head tube angles also got really slack. So when your front wheel gets really far in front, it totally makes sense to have more weight on your front wheel to get more weight on your tire when the head tube is that slack. When you go to jump a suspension bike or you go to bunny hop a suspension bike, if you're to take a snapshot or a video of yourself doing it, you'll see that as you go to bunny hop, your bike is folding and getting tighter. So those long reaches are a lot more manageable because when you do those moves, you're pulling the handlebars towards you and you're making your reach a lot shorter and allows you to do those technical moves with a shorter bike. And then when you're riding down the trail, it still feels nice and long. I wanted my bike to be a little bit shorter in the front end, and that was the idea behind adding a fourth size to this frame so that you can either size up or size down. If you want to go bombing down super gnarly hills and primarily ride downhill and wide open fast stuff, you'll just size up and take the bigger frame. If you're going to ride really technical stuff, you want to do real technical trialsy type stuff, jump it, pump track it, you could always have the option to size down now, which is something really awesome. So the idea behind making my bike a little bit shorter is I can run a slightly longer stem, so that gives me a little bit more weight over the front wheel. So when you're doing cool nose pivots and things like that, you're not so tucked back with a 35mm stem. You have some leverage over the front wheel. The reach isn't quite so long. And when you go to bunny hop or jump on a hardtail, there's no collapsing of the frame. It's not getting smaller. I think it's a better idea to have a slightly shorter front end. So that's a quick overview of the bike. If you're curious to see what I think of this geometry, make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure you turn on the post notifications so you don't miss any videos. I rode this thing yesterday for the first time. That's why it has a little bit of dirt on it. And it feels awesome to me. So I'm excited to share those videos. It's going to be an awesome 2021. So thanks for checking out the Bike Check. Until next time, get out there and be a boss.